Okay, so let's continue with the prompts today. The next one is I will never forget. And this was a really sweet prompt for me because it just really made me have to go back in time and think about all of the things that I won't forget. And they're all positive. So that was very, very unexpected for me. I'm sure there's some negative stuff in there, but I couldn't think of any. So kudos to my brain right now. So the first I'll never forget is how I felt when I first began sharing my beliefs of the craft, magic, with my sister, my partner, and some of my inner circle friends. I'll never forget that because it was something that in each instance it was different. So with my sister, I don't think there was ever like a true coming out moment. I feel like both of us kind of began to be more outwardly spiritual at the same time, which was really weird because we weren't living together like we are now, and we weren't communicating with each other on a regular basis. We kind of were just doing our own thing at the time. So to come together at random moments and discuss spiritual things and spirituality and realize that we kind of felt the same way was really nice. And I think one of the first times that I remember this happening was during a similar time, actually, because we just did the whole Day of the Dead celebration, and it was during that time she had made like an altar and put up pictures of some of our deceased family members, and we hadn't talked about doing it. Like, I did it in my own way and she did it in her own way, and then we found out we had both done it. And this isn't strictly pagan, it's a bit more cultural for us, because a lot of people who wouldn't consider themselves witchy or pagan or spiritual in the same way that we consider ourselves do still participate in those practices. I know that a lot of like Christian and Catholics from, the Mexican culture do still make altars for their deceased and loved ones. But that was like our first step into actually practicing something that may be looked at a little weird within our immediate family, because even though it is a Mexican culture practice, it wasn't something that our parents did or that they taught us to do. And that was just a really nice surprise, I think. And then, as we started discussing later on about more of the spiritual side of things, we realized we agreed on a lot of things, and we definitely were not going to associate ourselves with being Christian or Catholic at all anymore. And even though that had been the case for many years, that was like the defining moment, I think, at least for me, between her and I. I hope this video isn't too long, because I just realized how long I spent speaking on that first one, and I have several bullet points here. The second one is I'll never forget the first time I saw a spell book, or a witchy book, and I realized I'd never forget it because I was very young when I did, and I had no idea of the craft or how it was different than anything. Like, I had no idea about anything except for that I had questions, and we would go to church every Sunday. That's all I knew at that point. I don't know how old I was. I know that I was younger than 9, but I don't know how much more younger than that I was. So I'm just going to say I was like around 9 years old. And I was living in a townhome with my family, like my dad's side of the family and my grandmother. And in this one room, it was my dad, my mom, my sister, and I. That was our living space. So there wasn't a whole lot of secrecy that could have been had during those times. And my mom had a very small collection of books, and she would keep them kind of out of reach in the closet, like at the very top. So she didn't expect us to ever like really find them or whatever. And I remember pulling some of them down, and some of them were like old college history books from Mexico. But then I found this one book, and I believe it was like all red or red and black. And it had a Caucasian woman in the front cover. And I think she was, because this was in the 90s, she was wearing like shoulder pads, and it looked like an executive type of pantsuit with shoulder pads, and it was all in white with gold buttons. And she was blonde and had like a bob cut. And the book was in Spanish, and it basically said, I don't know if it said white magic or white witch magic or something like that, but it definitely had the word white in it. And I didn't know what I was going to find inside it. I just thought it was really cool, and I understood what those terms meant loosely, just because I've always been like a fantasy fan and a huge reader, even as a child. So I understood what spells meant in like a fantasy sense of the term, and a witch and magic, but like from a fantasy or book perspective. And I remember flipping through it, and these were like spells to do. And I remember one specifically because it was something that I tried. I don't know if I would call this a spell or not, because it was just so simple, but I don't know. So basically it was showing you how to dream about a specific person. And all I remember reading was, if you want to dream about a specific person, then try your hardest to obtain a picture of them. And hopefully it's just a picture with them in it, nobody else. And put it under your pillow before you go to bed, and then go to sleep, and you will have a dream of that person. And I read that, and I just thought it was like really cool, and it just like stuck with me, because I didn't actually try it until I think I was 12, 13-ish, with a guy that I had a crush on in middle school, and it worked. And I just thought, this is so cool, but I didn't really think anything else about it. And then when I kept on trying to like find that book again, eventually my mom got rid of it, and I know that had to do with the fact that she began exploring a different type of faith, which was no longer Catholicism. It was a Christian faith, and she ended up converting to that religion after. But yeah, that book was gone after that. So that's something I'll never forget, because it reminds me that at one point in time, my mom believed in something like that. And that's really special for me, because it just is. Another I'll never forget. I'll never forget realizing that my spirituality was an expression of the freedom that I had been seeking for so long. And this happened a lot of different times throughout me going through difficult times in my life, especially when I would feel defeated, or I would feel alone, or I would feel desperate to find answers to either help myself feel better or to navigate my future or life. I found that my craft and the way that I had redefined spirituality for myself was like the best. I'm really searching for the proper way to word this. But I don't want to say it was my best friend. I don't want to say that it was a coping mechanism. I want to say it was just something that allowed me to not feel so imprisoned by my own mind, by situations, or by other people. It gave me the freedom to find answers for myself. It just made me see the immense amount of possibilities that there were out in the world, and realizing that at different times of struggle in my life was just such a like relief, and it really made me want to share it with people. And even though I was very private and reserved, it made me like giddy and excited. So whenever I had the chance to say something that was even like adjacent to what I was doing, I would try to do it because I really just wanted everybody to like have that relief and not feel so stressed out or so bogged down by the mundane things in life that can kill our spirit. So that's something I'll never forget, is all of those moments in which my spirituality pulled me out of a place that was less than desirable. I guess that kind of leads to my next one. It's almost the same, but it's a little different. And that is that it made me realize how, no matter how bad things got, there was always a way to like witch your way out of things. Does that make sense? Or a way to find a way through the craft. And that was, like I said, it was really a relief to realize that there was always something to turn to. There was always going to be an answer. There was always going to be help. You were never like completely abandoned, I guess, is like the other way that I can say this. Another thing I'll never forget, and this is a funny one, is I'll never forget the first time my mom called me a witch. And she said it in like, I don't want to say in a negative way or a positive way. It was kind of like in a joking manner. But the reason I'll never forget it is because of the way it made me feel. It made me have a little bit of a stress response. It gave me a little bit of anxiety. And I remember I felt like my stomach drop a little because I didn't know what was going to come after that. Like, I didn't know if it was going to be like, you're a witch, enter negative comment, or enter unexpected comment. Like, either way, like I had no idea what to expect. And that's why I'll never forget that moment, because I didn't even realize that I was going to have that reaction. So that's why I'll never forget that moment. Which leads me to another moment with my mother. So this, I'll never forget when my mom, I think this was like in 2017 or maybe 2016. I'll never forget when she found my stash of occult and witchcraft books and threw them away. And at that time, I was kind of living at home, but also staying elsewhere a lot. And when I came back one day, all of my books were gone. And I didn't even have the courage to confront her about it. And she never talked about it either. And it was during a time that she was really into the Christian religion that she became a part of. And the reason I say that is because that's not so true presently. But yeah, I'll never forget that. And I call it the book burning of 2016 or 2017, because it was just like, oh, it took me so long to collect those books and to buy those books. And I remember like receiving packages and trying to hide into my room, like run into my room and then like kind of hide what was in the package. And my mom had a habit of asking me like, oh, what did you order? Or what did you get? And I was like, she can't know. So I would remember like stuffing sometimes packages into my shirt and then like making a run for my room so she wouldn't see like these books that I was ordering. But yeah, I'll never forget when she got rid of my books, which is funny now, especially when you look at my room, because now none of my books are hidden. Like, you see all of these books back here, and then there's books all in front of me, and then there's even books in the hallway, and some of them are obviously occult or witchy books. But yeah, the relationship between my spirituality, me and my mother, has changed drastically in the past few years. But I'll still never forget that she did that. And one day we're going to talk about it. And that wraps up my I'll never forget for now.